Hey everybody, I'm RC, and recently I picked up this really cool Magnavox Odyssey 2 system at an estate sale. It only came with one game, so I did some research into some cool games to buy for it. And one that continued to pop up was Quest for the Rings. So today I'm going to be talking about Quest for the Rings for the Magnavox Odyssey 2. Let's get started. Quest for the Rings isn't just an ordinary game. Most Odyssey games are just like Atari games at a time. You just stick it in the cart and start playing. Quest for the Rings isn't one of those because it's not just a video game. It's also a board game. So let's go ahead and take a look into the box here. As soon as you open up the box, right on top you have this very high quality instruction book. They sure don't make them like this anymore, that's for sure. Below that we have two things. First we have the actual video game cartridge, and we also have a tray that contains all the little parts and pieces for the actual board game. Right below that we have an overlay for the Odyssey's keyboard that has all the different keys you need to press for the game. And right below that at the very bottom we have the actual game board itself. Alright, so then what do you do with all this stuff? How the hell are you supposed to play this? Well, let's start off with setting up the game board first. The goal of the game is to collect all 10 magical rings in a set amount of turns, hence the name Quest for the Rings. These metal coins here represent the rings. You hide them underneath random dungeons on the board. Some of them may also have one of these coins, which represent two of the different types of monsters. You have the nightmares and the dragons. If a dungeon has a ring but no monster, then the player just has to collect the ring. Whenever you land on a dungeon, that's where the video game comes into play. You see, the players play out the dungeon scenarios on the Odyssey. Let's use this space as an example. Flip the dungeon piece over and we have a ring and a monster. We go over to the Odyssey and we tell it what we landed on. Since we have a ring, we tell the Odyssey first what monster we have. Next we tell it which type of dungeon we landed on. Underneath the plastic dungeon pieces are symbols which represent the 4 different levels. In this case, we just got the dungeons. The Odyssey then randomly generates the level based on what we just told it to do. And boom, here we are. The circle on the screen is the ring. One of the players just has to go and collect it, and then they can take the ring piece off the board and continue on. So that's the basic gist of the game. Move around the board, plug in your levels into the Odyssey, play the virtual levels, collect 10 rings, win the game. So now let's go into the deeper details. First off, there are actually 4 different characters you can play as. There's the warrior who has a sword who can defeat the small human-like enemies. The book says that they're supposed to be orcs and fire wraths, but I usually just call them zombies. Then there's also a wizard who can use magic to immobilize the zombies temporarily. Then there's a phantom who can go through certain walls. And then lastly there's a changeling which can basically just turn invisible. Players will have to choose their characters wisely and work together using their different abilities to get through the dungeons. Now let's take a look at the 4 different dungeons. The first one is just called The Dungeons. How original. This is the most basic level with no trickery involved. Just make it to the exit or collect the ring and that's it. Then there's the Infernos. This level is pretty much just like the dungeon levels, but the walls are made of fire, so they will kill players if touched, and even the phantom can't go through them. Next is the Shifting Halls. In this level, the walls will randomly move around from time to time. This can be helpful by blocking monsters from getting to you, or it can be a real pain by blocking you from getting to the objective. Lastly, there's Crystal Caverns. Here the walls are completely invisible, so you have to stumble around and bump into a wall to be able to see the entire level just temporarily. Quest for the Rings is honestly a really fun game, even after nearly 40 years. I played this with my cousin recently, and we had a great time overall. I really enjoyed the strategic aspect to it. You sometimes have to really think ahead about which characters to use and when to use them in certain levels. The board game part of it is really well done. All the parts and pieces seem to be quality made. The video game part is mostly well thought out and executed too. I say mostly because there are some issues with the game. Sometimes when you enter a level with the nightmare monsters, they'll spawn on top of the ring. Look at this asshole, he's camping the objective. This makes it to where you have no choice but to die and redo it. This doesn't happen too often though, and it's just a minor inconvenience. The biggest issue though are the dragons. The dragons are damn near impossible to get past. My cousin and I collected most of the rings before we finally stumbled upon a level with the dragons. We then spent over 75 turns on this one dungeon. Just for reference, the book says that 100 turns are recommended for beginners. We spent 3/4 of our turns on just one dragon. These things shoot seemingly heat-seeking fireballs across the entire level at you, while you run at the speed of a snail. It doesn't matter if its back's turned to you, because as soon as you step across a certain line of pixels, it knows. We tried an endless combination of characters to find the best way to get past the dragons, and in the end, we found out that it didn't really matter what we chose. The dragons are gonna win anyway. While recording the gameplay for this video, I did manage to somewhat find a strategy that works against them. If you get really lucky, you can sacrifice one player while the other one hauls ass to the ring. I managed to beat the game this way, but it's still hard to pull off. I can't imagine how frustrating this must have been to kids and families playing this back in the day. You get this really awesome video board game hybrid for your futuristic game console, only to get curb stomped repeatedly by frickin' dragons. The dragons are supposed to be hard, and I understand that, but oftentimes they're just unfair, and it's hard not to say that it's just bad game design. Luckily, if the dragons are proving too difficult, you can just generate another monster. After all, you're the one who tells the Odyssey what to generate. Because of this, you can kinda control the difficulty of the game. If you want to bend the rules a little bit or make a custom game, it's definitely possible. All said and done, I find Quest for the Rings fascinating, and I really do like it. I'm glad I was able to obtain a copy and get a chance to play it. It's a very obscure piece of gaming history that I think should be remembered. If you ever have the chance to play this game, go for it. Get together with some friends, have fun, and rage at some dragons. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you wish. I'll see you next time.